just want to introduce myself. I'm Lee Sherbeyn with the Lee Sherbeyn Real Estate Team and Sampson Properties. And we're here to explain the process that buyers have to go through to have a successful settlement. I got some people here with me that I want to introduce to you. I have Doug Salzman from CMG Mortgage, I have Christina, who's with MBH Settlement, and I have John and Cynthia Murray from Housemaster, and they do the home inspections. To get started, when I get started with a client, I need to interview the client, and I want the client to be interviewing me because we have to be able to work together. Okay, so I can meet you at my house, or at your house, I can meet you at my office, whatever's convenient for you, the client. But I think we need to make sure we understand what's going on, and whether you feel comfortable with me and I feel comfortable with you. So it's a two-way street there. If all goes well, I get all your information, your full names, your addresses, phone numbers, emails of everyone that's going to be on the deed and stuff, so that I can proceed. And then we're going to talk about all your needs and your wants, and that you can expect from me, and the things that I need from you. There's lots of things that need to get done. The first thing I'm going to ask you to do is sign a buyer's representation agreement. This is something that the law requires me to do. I've got to have the right to represent you. I know a lot of you have talked to people that never made you sign it, and I know agents out there that don't do it. But I will not work with you if you're not willing to sign that agreement, because it protects you and it tells you what I'm responsible to do for you. The agents that choose not to have that done before they show houses and start working with you, they're breaking the law. Nobody will probably ever hold them accountable, but you want to work with somebody that's willing to do that, that's up to you. But I will require you to sign that. It can be for a certain time frame. It doesn't have to be for a long period of time. We can make it for a year. We can make it for 1 month. We can make it just to show you that one property. But you must sign that agreement. I don't care if it's just to go look at the one house. And then if you don't feel comfortable with the way I did things, you can kick me to the curb. You can fire me. Because I really believe that if I'm doing my job, you won't fire me. And if I'm not doing my job, you shouldn't be stuck with me. On my buyer's agreement, you're responsible for a certain amount of time. If you want out early, the same thing applies. There is no early termination fee. The only reason I like to do it for a certain amount of time is so that I don't have to keep sending you an addendum to fix it and make it for a more extended period. All right, getting a pre-approval letter is the first thing you want to do after you've decided we're going to work together. So I'm going to hook you up with a guy that I trust to get the job done, and that's Doug Salzman. Doug, if you'll come up and explain what you need from him, I'd appreciate it.
Good morning, everybody. My name's Doug Salzman. I'm happy to be here. I am a lender, so I work for a mortgage company, and we are a direct lender who helps you purchase your home. We pre-approve you, we process, fund, underwrite the loan, and go to closing with you. The way my company works is we handle your loan process from start to finish, and certainly in the years to come after your home purchase, we're always around to help you. Basically, what we want to do initially in a pre-approval process is talk to you about your goals first. We'll usually have a conversation by phone or in person about your goals, your budgets, your needs, your motivation, and what you want to happen during the home buying process. So when we have that conversation, I can cater your pre-approval not to really what all my requirements are, but what our requirements are that closely match your goals and needs. After that conversation, we usually get started on the pre-approval process, which is gathering a little bit of information: name, address, phone, social, employment information, asset information, banking, debt information. We discuss credit, family size, and things like that. Sometimes goes into some of the first-time buyer programs. So we'll talk about those things. Then we'll gather the documents we need to verify some of the information that we received. Generally, we collect pay stubs, W-2s. Depending on your type of income, we might collect bank statements. For self-employed business owners, usually we'll collect 2 years of tax returns. And then I take all of that information, we look at your income, your assets, your debt, your credit. And after analyzing that, it gives us all the information we need to know to find out what loan programs you qualify for. And there's usually more than one. It's never just one option. There are usually 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 options for some people. It tells us what price range you can purchase it based on your personal goals plus your lending approval. It will give us the price range for you to start shopping in, and that will also give us payment estimates for your mortgage payment. That'll also give us closing cost estimate for your closing costs you need to buy the house. And then we'll discuss all those things again, and I'll help counsel you how to make your home purchase work between your pre-approval and your personal goals. And at that point, we issue a pre-approval letter. Then we start collaborating. I work closely with most of my clients to give you information on specific houses. When you're out shopping with Lee, you might say, well, I love this house, but how much is it going to cost me per month? Lee will say, let's call Doug, or give Doug a call. And that's where I jump back in. And we work pretty closely during the home buying process while you're shopping, because we want to help you make the right decision. After that process, you find a home that you like. Lee helps you negotiate and go under contract. And then once you get your contract, the contract comes back to me so that we can start processing your loan file. Real quickly, we finish the full application based on your contract information. We gather additional docs. Your file goes into processing. We communicate back and forth with you. Your file goes to a department called underwriting, which approves the loan. Once the loan is approved, it comes back to my folks, and we get your funds ready for closing paperwork, and then of course closing day. And then it goes on from there. There's a lot more that goes on behind the scenes, but that's the basic home buying process. So basically, I'm the loan officer, and yes, I do make lending decisions for the company. And I vet out your information, but it is a bit of a preliminary process because there's a much formal process called underwriting that every file goes through so that all the details and all the aspects of the purchase can be verified, certified, and approved. Now, things like title search are checked by the underwriter. Things like the appraisal are checked by an underwriter. Sure, I'll get a copy of your appraisal. I'll look at it from my perspective. I'll see that the value's right and that there are no conditions on the property and that the data looks fairly good. But an underwriter who makes that final approval decision to loan you the money for your house, he or she, usually she, looks through every line of that appraisal, where I look at it from a preliminary perspective. Same thing with income and assets. I look through things very thoroughly, but she will vet things out 100%. And that really is what's required to guarantee the company is making a good loan decision to a client, is that we have that independent underwriter that verifies all the information that we have is correct the way that we have it. So,
Thank you, Doug.
all right.
All right, so as Doug said, he lets us know what you can qualify for. I don't like taking people out and looking at a lot of houses that they can't qualify for. They get excited, they get worked up about something, and the worst thing you can do is go dash their hopes because they found a home they fell in love with, and then they find out they can't buy it anyway. So it really doesn't do us any good. So once Doug gives me that and gets you qualified, we'll sit down and put together a strategy to figure out what the current market and what you guys need, what your needs are. How many bedrooms do you have to have? How many bathrooms? Now, a lot of us would like a lot of things, but some of us have certain needs you must meet, and then we can look at what you would like to have. We'll always provide the house that has your needs. Sometimes we can't always provide all things you'd like to have in that price range. Some of us would like to have a 4-car garage, but we're not gonna get it, okay? So we have to understand that up front. Once we identify a home that you like, we'll get together and we'll put an offer on it. I'll do comparative market analysis for you to show you what other houses in that area in today's market is selling for. Then you make the decision of what price you want to offer. Once we submit the offer, we have to wait. Most of the time, within 24 to 48 hours, we're getting an answer, but there are some that take longer. Once we get that back, and we go back and forth, sometimes you have to offer, counter offer, and it goes back and forth. But once everybody agrees on all the terms of the contract, we have a ratified contract. Everybody's in agreement, and now the real work starts. I have to send that contract, and I'll send it to Doug so he can start his process, and I'll also send it to the settlement company. And Christine from MBH is going to tell you what she's going to do in her process that she's going to do, why we're still waiting for everybody to tell us whether we can get this done or not. Christine, would you come up and let them know a little bit?
Hello, everybody. I'm excited to be here too, to talk to you a little bit about the title company perspective and our piece in this big puzzle. I guess the reason why there are a bunch of us here is because it really is a bunch of different pieces and people working together as a team to get you to the finish line. And oftentimes people think of title companies as just the people that sit with you at the settlement table. But we really start working on it from the very beginning. So what we do is when Lee ratifies your contract for purchase, he'll send me a copy. We open up that contract in our system and we order a title search. So title search is to protect you as the buyer, to make sure that the title that you're obtaining for the property is free and clear of any defects or issues that could be found on the seller side or the chain of title in the past. So we look back 60 years plus to make sure that everything is good and clear so that when we go to the closing table, you're getting something that's in perfect condition. So we start that title search at the very beginning, and you can kind of think of us as like an intermediary or somebody that kind of brings all of the pieces together. So we start working with the lender at the same time. The lender, Doug, will send over some preliminary information to us. We'll send preliminary information back to the lender, and we essentially bebop back and forth all the way up until the settlement date. So getting the numbers correct, making sure that everything is exact so that when you are at that closing table, the numbers are exactly what you're expecting, you've reviewed in advance, and you're comfortable to sign your documents. So Lee also keeps us informed as anything changes throughout the transaction. So anything comes up during negotiations of home inspection, which you guys are going to talk about in a bit, he'll let us know if there are any credits or any changes to the actual transaction process that affect your settlement so that we can keep everything updated along the way. We work behind the scenes to fix title issues. So if anything does come up that needs to be fixed, we stay on top of that. My goal is always to not alarm anyone if it's something that I can fix without doing so. And so we're making sure to do that. You will typically work with someone from my office who's called a processor. I like to warn people about that because you often don't realize why someone is reaching out to you, called a processor from a title company. But they're essentially gathering information. So gathering basic information from you. Some of that will be private information, so don't be alarmed. We need things like your social security number, etc., to be able to run judgment searches and all of the things that are relevant to get you to the closing table. But all of that is passed back and forth on a secure platform. So when you hear from us, make sure you know who you're talking to. Lee will tell you who to expect. But you'll be working with me. You'll also be working with the title processor who works in my office. So as I said, it's a bit of a bebopping back and forth, hopefully behind the scenes so that it's not affecting you too much in gathering all of the information needed to get you to the closing table. And we're a super good team, so we do it very efficiently and hopefully in a way that makes it really easy for you. After we've done our bebopping and figured out all of the numbers, the taxes, and everything that's relevant for your closing, we start to put together your settlement documents. And the most important, I would say, two of those are what we call the closing disclosure, which is prepared by the lender, and the ALTA settlement statement. Kind of funny because they're really exactly the same thing. So closing disclosure prepared by the lender, the settlement statement is prepared by us. But you're going to see both versions of that document that have all of the numbers that are relevant to your closing that get you to your bottom line. So the goal being that you see those numbers well in advance of closing, at least 3 days before per regulation, so that you have a chance to ask questions, so that you're not surprised at the settlement table. And then when you sit down with me at closing, we'll be at a long table just like this, and we'll go through all of the documents, title insurance documents. Title insurance is something that you can choose to obtain or not obtain. I would say 98% of people obtain title insurance, maybe 99. So title insurance is technically optional for the owner, but what it is a type of insurance you only pay for one time. So it protects you against any future issues with the title to your property. And sometimes people say to me, well, if you're reviewing my title and you just told me you're doing that, then why in the world do I need insurance? The insurance is to cover the unknown. So I review everything that I've got to make sure that all of it looks perfect. But there are also potential things like fraud, forgery, prior owner issues that could pop up that wouldn't be able to be known by me at the time. So title insurance protects you against those types of things, liens that could be filed after closing. In the grand scheme of things, it's relatively inexpensive, and it protects you should anything come up later. So probably the only type of insurance you only pay for once, and you pay for it at closing, you get the policy after, and that's kind of another big part of the process with this kind of stuff. But all of that gets explained to you at closing. You get all of your loan documents, which I will sit at the table with you and go through in detail. So you will have already talked to Doug about your loan terms and how the loan is going to work, but you get that added reassurance of that last day at the closing table to go through all of those documents and fully understand them before you're done. Questions, anybody? There are two types of title insurance. There's a lender's title insurance and there's an owner's title insurance. The lender's title insurance is always going to be required. And that's because a lender, rightfully so, doesn't want to loan money on a property that they don't have protection on. So they're lending you money to purchase the home. They want to make sure that they're protected from the perspective of title. The owner's title insurance is a separate policy. And sometimes at the closing table or when you're looking at those preliminary numbers, it can feel redundant. But just remember, it's defined by who it protects. So the lender's title insurance protects the lender, the owner's title insurance protects the owner, which is you. And so if you want to protect your own interest, your equity in the property, which is only going to increase as you pay down the loan, then it's important to have the policy for yourself as well. The question is that the documents that you sign at closing are legal documents. They are binding documents, so once you sign them, you're committed to that agreement with the lender and the documents that you signed for title insurance. And so the question being, do you need to bring an attorney with you to closing? Can you? I guess, two separate questions. The first one, do you need to? The answer is you don't have to. There's nothing in the state that requires you to have your own attorney at the settlement table. Can you? Always. So I have had customers show up to closing with attorneys who want to feel that confidence, by their side. But remember that when you're closing with a title company like mine, MBH, it's going to be an attorney sitting with you at the table. So I sit down, I am painfully familiar with all of these documents, and I can probably recite them without looking at them. And so I'm also really, really quick to notice if anything is not typical. And so I like to give that confidence to the customer at the table. I give a really good summary of every single document we're going over. It's not going to be the type of thing where documents are thrown at you and you're expected to sign without understanding what they are. So we go through those from a legal perspective, but I promise in plain English so that it's understandable before you have to sign everything. And Lee can attest, I can do a good thorough closing, especially for first-time home buyers. So we'll answer all of the questions there.
She's right, I can attest to it. I've been in some settlements where the client had chose another settlement company, and there's many of them out there, and the client has the right to choose any of them they like. If you've had one in the past, you want to use them, I'm not going to push you in any direction. The people that are here with me today on this team that I've used a lot are the only ones that I recommend because they're the only ones that have never dropped the ball for my clients. So I'll just put that up front. I don't get paid a dime. I'm not part of their business. I have no financial interest in any of their business or in using them, okay? You can use any one you want. These are just the ones that I've used in the past and they've helped me. On settlements that we've had before, I had clients that had questions about certain forms and the person sitting there's answer was, I don't know what that is. I can't tell you what it is. I'm not an attorney. And even if they wanted to explain it, they're not supposed to because so they're now practicing law without a license. That's why I use MBH, because I've always got an attorney sitting there. All right, once we get the contract and we've sent it off to these guys, there's lots of different things inside this contract that we'll go over. And I'm not going to talk about everything in detail, but you have lots of contingencies. You have a financial contingency, you have appraisal contingency, you have a home inspection contingency, well and septic if those are part of it, if you're not on public water and sewer. I never recommend you do not have a home inspection. Even when houses were selling so fast and nobody wanted to have a home inspection because they're afraid they'd lose the contract, I don't recommend it. You need to understand what you're purchasing. And when that happens, if you ask my referral, I'm gonna refer Housemaster. I have lots of other ones that I used years ago, and I was very satisfied with them, but I didn't know what I didn't know. I went to an inspection with John Murray from Housemaster, and I've never referred another inspection company since then. You're welcome to get your own if you have one, but these are the most thorough people I've ever seen, and he doesn't scare you with a lot of little things to make it look like he knows what he's doing. You're not going to get scared off for little nickel dime things that happen on every house. So at this time, I'm going to introduce John so he can tell you what he's going to do when he comes out to do your home inspection. Because he's the first phone call I'm making after I send the contracts to these guys. We're going to schedule a home inspection so we can get it done in time.
As I said, I'm John Murray with Housemaster Home Inspections. First, we're going to clear up one little thing that people always go through. What's the difference between an appraiser and a home inspector? Okay, there's a big difference. The appraiser is going to look at the value of the house based on comps, based on the size, the location, things of that nature. So they're looking at it from that perspective. And an appraiser, 90% of his work's done in his office before he ever shows up at the house. That's why they're only at the house 15 minutes, 20 minutes, because they're just validating what they know about the house. A home inspection, on the other hand, is a comprehensive look at the house from the roof to the foundation. Okay? We take into account everything that's going on in the house, the age of the house, the components of the house, the structure of the house. We do everything from 1800s houses all the way up to new construction. And when we do it, we're in the house, we get the age of all your appliances to let you know how old the appliances are in the house. We look at open and close every door. We open and close every window. We check all the receptacles and make sure it's wired properly. You'd be surprised how many DIY projects we run across where they were in there, it's 2-wire home in an older house. Well, those receptacles aren't as pretty as the ground receptacles. They pull out the old one, stick the ground receptacle in, you have no ground. But you expect it to be there. So that's why we check all of the receptacles. We check all the switches. Because DIY guys go in and they put in a 3-way switch coming into a room, but they don't know how to wire a 3-way switch. So you have to have the one over by the kitchen on in order to get the one coming out of the living room to turn on. That's kind of how, because they miswired it. We look for safety items. Any receptacles that are missing a cover, any junction boxes that are open and have 120-volt wires sticking out of them, right? Those are all safety issues. We check the plumbing, both the supply side and the drain side. There's certain types of plumbing out there that you need to be aware of. Some people use them as fear factor, as Lee talked about, oh my God, you got poly B, everybody shut down the world, poly B's in here. Poly B is just a type of plumbing. It's generation 0 for what we call PEX today, right? So that was just the first poly type pipe that was put into a house. So yes, they got a bad rap. Yes, they got hit for a lot of stuff. They went out of business, but that doesn't make them the devil incarnate, right? They aren't the worst thing that a house can have. So we look at safety things and all the way through. We go all the way, up into the attic. Because I can look outside a house and I can have my binoculars up, I can fly my drone, I can do all kinds of stuff, but all I'm looking at is the surface of the roof. I really see what's going on when I get into that attic, and I can look at the rafters, I can look at the trusses, I can look at the insulation, what's going on up there. That gives me the best picture of a house from a roof perspective. We look at the floor joists once we go down underneath. If it's a basement, great. The things that we can see, we see. The things that we can't, we can't. We try to do our best. I'll walk walls, rubbing my hand along the wall. If I feel something cold, I'll pull out the infrared camera and we'll take a look at it. I did a house in Gainesville a couple weeks ago. A lady called and said, my house, my gas bills are way high, and I can't figure out why. Would you come look at my house? So I went in, I ran the IR camera about 6 inches from her slab to where they had the insulation. There was no insulation along the base of her house on any exterior wall for the bottom 6 inches. And there was a 12-degree temperature differential between the insulation part of the wall and the floor. And I told her, right there's your problem. Pull off all your molding, get insulation put in, pack it back down. But those are the type of things we can do as a home inspector to help you live better in your house. There's a lot of what they call today hacks, right, that we can teach homeowners. Like 4 ounces of vinegar down your HVAC condensation tube every 4 months. Because the mucus, the condensation that comes out of there has a mucus component, and it blocks the pipes just like your arteries can get clogged. So once every 4 months, 4 ounces of vinegar, the acid in the vinegar eats the mucus out of the pipes, keeps the pipes flowing freely. The #1 cause of the death of air conditioners is water backing up into the air handler and the condenser sitting in that water and rusting. So a little bit of 4 ounces of vinegar will take care of that, and we always talk about it. If you're drinking green beer, your HVAC gets vinegar. If you're shooting off fireworks, your HVAC gets vinegar. If you're putting a turkey in the oven, your HVAC gets vinegar. Okay? That's the beginning, the middle, and the end of the air conditioning seasons. And those are the kind of life hacks, and those are the type of things that we teach new homeowners about their house. Because to me, a home inspection is more than me going in the house and finding all the problems with it. That's not my job. My job is to find the safety issues. My job is to point out other issues to you if we see them, what's going on. But my job is really to educate you on your house and what it is and how it operates. And one thing I always tell the clients is, if they have any question, the day that I do the inspection, they'll receive their report. If they have any questions after receiving that report, between then and the time to go to closing, or even when they move in. Because I know they move into the house, we threw all this information at them. And they go, okay, I got it. Then they move in the house and go, he said something about that, don't remember what it was. Call me. I can, most generally, once I see a picture of the house, I can recall the house. And we can have that conversation. Okay? So that happens quite often. So one thing that we do that's different than most other home inspectors, we include well equipment as a part of our standard home inspection. Because I cannot go into a house, I cannot say I checked your plumbing system if I don't check your pressure tank, I don't check your pressure switch, I don't check your flow. Otherwise, what did I look at? Well, that's the exact same thing that somebody who charges you $450 to do a well inspection is going to do. So we throw that in, it's included in the home inspection at no additional cost. So it's kind of a differentiator for us, what we do. So if you're looking for a home inspector, there's hundreds of us out here. There really is. If you're comfortable with one, then by all means, use them. But if you have any questions, reach out to us at Housemaster Home Inspections. I am fully certified in indoor air quality, so I can do either an air draw or I can do swab or tape lift if we see an area. You don't typically swab or tape lift unless you can actually see microbial growth. We don't use the term mold unless it's been verified by a lab to be mold, because there's all kinds of microbial growths out there. There's thousands of them. And for me to sit and say, that's mold, I might be right, I might be wrong. But probably 80 or 90% of what we see that we think is mold is mildew and can be cleaned up with a Clorox water solution. But we do indoor air quality, we do infrared. Like I said, went in and did some infrared shots on that. We do radon. Especially in this area, in the Commonwealth of Virginia, there's a map that shows radon probabilities. That map was built in the 1970s, okay? The EPA has not updated their maps, so the Commonwealth refuses to update their maps because they don't want confusion. So, but I'm here to tell you the things that are red are absolutely red. The things that are yellow probably should be red, or orange probably should be red. The things that are yellow probably should be orange, maybe red. There is a lot more radon in the Commonwealth than we believe, all right? Commonwealth of Virginia was one of the #1 uranium mining states in the nation back in the day, okay? So what's that tell you? It's a lot of uranium in our ground. Well, that's what spurs on radon. It becomes radium and then it becomes radon. Radon is not something new, although a lot of people think, well, where did this come from? Well, it's in the periodic table of elements, and Madame Curie is the one who found it. So if you think back, that was a day or two ago, right? So it's been there. The problem is we had lice loose houses, but now we start Tyvek wrapping them. We start putting in double pane windows and we're sealing that house up as tight as we can get it. Well, now the radon has no way out. So it gets in the house, stays in the house, and does that. There's a couple myths out there on radon. I have a crawl space, so there's no way I have radon. Wrong. I'm on a slab, so I don't have radon. Wrong. Now, the least probability for a house to have radon is a crawl space that is properly vapor barriered and properly ventilated. You have the least probability of getting radon in the house because the crawl space, the vapor barrier is holding the radon down, and that is getting up, the ventilation is taking it out. So there you have your least. The next least is a slab because it's one surface touching the ground. And that's the only place that the radon has to come into the house is through that one point of entry, that surface. In a full basement, you've got either, if you have an open back house, then you've got 4 surfaces touching the ground to let radon in. If you have a fully enveloped basement, you've got 5 surfaces. You got the slab and all 4 walls. So that's kind of an update on the myths of radon, right? It's always a good idea to get radon tested, no matter where you are, what you're doing. Particularly from Petersburg through Richmond, gets to 17, and then running out to the mountain. That is nothing but a corridor for radon. And we do water testing. We can run the test. We don't do it personally. We pull the draw, take it to Joyner Labs in Warrenton. Joyner runs the testing for us, or if it's a full package of the lead, the nitrate, nitrite, we pull that up and send it off to a lab called EMSL, who does that testing for us. So we've got a full range of different tests beyond just walking in a house and looking at the walls. I do. I go through the entire attic. I also go through all the crawl spaces. I think there's been 2 buildings that I didn't do the crawl space, and that's because it was only a 6-inch pick off the ground, and I just can't get there. But I will, at that point, get underneath it as far as I can and take a look at everything I can see. But other than that, I'm going in a crawl space. If it's army crawl, I crawl it. If it's, duck crawl, so one I did a couple weeks ago was I called it a duck crawl, which means you just quad it down and walked around it. But we need to look at that because I'm not your pest inspector, but I know what frass looks like. So I like to call that out to be able to send the pest inspector to a location to look at that. Our home inspection has 2 sections. There's a summary, which is everything that's fair and poor. Then there's the body, which is everything, because we look at hundreds of items in a house, hundreds. So when you pull it up, you get the summary first, and it goes through each of the sections of anything that had either a fair or a poor in it. Poor is absolutely, if it's a safety issue, it'll be all caps, underlined, bolded. It'll say safety issue and then go into it, okay? Any safety issue is a poor. But then there's fair, yeah, the oven lights out. Okay, we can still cook. It's not dead, right? Things like that, and that all falls in the fair category. It'll pop up in your summary. We also have what's called a repair list generator, which is really cool that you bring up your report and you go to the top and click on one of the little blue buttons. This says repair list generator. The first item in the summary pops up with a picture and a write-up, and you can say accept as is, request repair, request replace, so that you can develop what would be a PDF attachment that goes back with the hit. It's kind of cool.
Wow.
It's a real
It's
cool
very
feature.
cool.
Yeah.
I love it.
And you can save it as a PDF, and you can just attach that PDF with a Hickory and send it off. You don't have to rewrite it, you don't have to cut and paste it.
And use the other items for the honey-do list.
Honey-do list, right? Or you can go in and make up a bunch of them. I always tell people you can make as many of these repair lists as you want. Here's the one going to the seller. Here's the one going to the handyman. Here's the one going to dad. Here's the one going to my husband. Here's my, you know what I mean? And you can make as many of them as you want and save them as PDFs. So it's a really cool feature.
Perfect.
It's what we do. Yep, I take pictures everywhere I go. The average photos on a home inspection are 200. That's the average number of pictures that we take. If some houses have required me to take 400 pictures, that's just a function of, how it is. I do check the foundations. When I'm in the crawl space, I'm looking at the foundation wall. When I'm in a basement, I'm looking at the foundation wall. I'm checking for water. I'm checking everything to go on with that foundation, how the beams are set, how we're setting the house up, what the floor structure, all that's in. And then at the end of every home inspection, I take my laptop, I put all the pictures on it, and we walk over all those pictures. Because that's the time for the buyer to ask me questions. That also can give me a prompt that this buyer's more interested in these things, so I make sure I take my normal write-ups on those and bolster them to be a little more guided toward their requirements or their desires. So we go over them all so they don't see the report and go, oh my God, I've never seen this picture. They go, oh yeah, that's the picture John showed me. I remember seeing that. And it also cues them on some of the things I said during the oral brief, not just what's in the report.
Do you like the buyer present while you're doing your?
Absolutely, absolutely. I love to have the buyers present during the home inspection. Because to me, again, like I said, it's as much an educational event as it is. Now, I tell them right up front, you can go with me anywhere and everywhere you want to. I prefer you not go in the attic and walk with me. You can pop your head up there, you can take a look around, do all that stuff. I don't want you up on the joists because I don't want you coming through the ceiling, then we all got a problem. I take them and I say, it's also kind of boring to watch me walk around a room, sticking a tester into all the receptacles, and open and closing windows, open and closing doors. You're more than welcome to do that. I have some realtors that are on my hip the entire inspection. It's okay. I don't mind it at all. Or you can go do what you want to do, and if you see something that you want me to answer a question on, come find me. I'll come answer that question. Okay? That 2.5 hours on that house, and that's the average home inspection time, belongs to that buyer. And that's mostly what I'm concerned with, is what the buyer gets out of the home inspection, not me. I can go through a house in a half hour, 45 minutes, get all the pictures I need, go home and write a report. I'd rather spend the time with the buyer talking about their largest investment of their life in most cases.
Like I said, I always recommend a home inspection, and I can attest to the quality of the home inspection that Housemaster does. For 30 years, I did home improvements and home repairs going behind home inspectors. Back then, the home inspector could be a real estate agent and just go out and hang a shingle and say, I'm a home inspector, and get a business license. He didn't have to have any qualification like the contractors and stuff did. It was just a couple of years ago that they started requiring them to pass a test to go out and do home inspections. The only problem I had with that was anybody who was already a home inspector was grandfathered in. So a lot of the slugs were still out there, but they'll weed themselves out as they go along. I've been with John on lots of home inspections. He's right there, he explains it. The only thing, he's already been there half an hour before I get there, because he's up on the roof and he knows he don't want you on the roof. So he's usually got the roof done by the time your 10 o'clock appointment starts. He's ready to walk with you because he don't want you on the roof with him. All right, where was I? All right, we got the home inspector, we're doing that. We're trying to worry about all our other contingencies and getting them done. The finance contingency, we have to have that done on time. And all the other contingencies have a time limit on them, so we just need to work fast. If the lender is asking you for information, you need to get it to them as quick as possible. If I'm asking you for information, I need you to work with us and get it to us, because we don't want to lose out on them because we've got on a contingency. Time is of the essence. It's written in your contract. That's what it says. Once we get everything done and we know where everything's going through, you've accepted the home inspection and we're through everything, you want to start thinking about the things you need to prep for. You need to call your insurance company, start getting a policy lined up and stuff. Get all them online. But after the title's clear and all that stuff, we're pretty much done. Everybody's going to settlement. There are things that you could do to mess it up yourself. Don't go out and buy a car. Don't go out and open a credit card account. Don't even go close a credit card account. If your lender didn't tell you these are things you need to do to get qualified, don't do anything financially. You can buy groceries. You can buy gas in your car. That's it. Don't do anything. I had a lady that Doug was working with, and we spent 6-8 months. Finally found her a house she qualified for. She was qualified, and 2 weeks before settlement, everything was clear. Doug calls me and says, she just went out and bought a truck. She does not qualify. And I probably had 60 hours of running this woman around because all the houses she wanted to look at were down by Richmond. She wasn't even a close one. So just use your head. Don't do anything you shouldn't do. We're going to get you the information for the utility companies, gas, water, electric. You're going to want to start calling them and getting accounts set up. Because once we're sure we're clear to close, you want to get all these things done, and we'll help you get all that information. Okay? Any questions?
There are different ways to do it, and there's different things that we're going to advise the client based on what the need is. So in some cases, if the client has a lower credit score and we want to get them a credit bump because of better interest rates or to even get qualified, then we would do that credit card payoff before the purchase, during the pre-approval process. And get that score updated on their credit report, get the new credit report with the higher number, higher credit score. But if we are asking a buyer to lower their balances, then in some cases that can just be done after they're under contract. And while we're processing, it's just verified right before settlement. So it's just it's just like asking for a pay stub. We're going to ask for proof that this credit card balance is lower.
So that doesn't stop the process.
With every customer is going to happen, one of three things. We're going to tell you what you need to do to get approved in the time frame that we need to do it in. Or we're going to tell you that you're approved, but by settlement we have to do these couple things. Or we're going to tell you you're approved. Nothing, don't need to do anything. Generally, most things are quick fixes. There's the occasional client that would have a real low credit score or real high balances, and then you give them a time frame and a plan how to get there. Usually a 3-month time frame will get a credit score up, a 6-month time frame will get a credit score up.
That's what I was looking for.
It just depends on what that individual customer. There's a lot of different pieces of advice based on what their situation is. Generally, the industry looks for a 640 credit score. My kind of standard is always that you have a 620 or above. Now, FHA does lend down to 580. So if you have between a 580 and a 620, you can get an FHA loan. There's a little bit more work and a few more requirements, but great rate, same mortgage insurance, you can do that. 620 and above qualifies you for just about all loan programs, except USDA requires a 640 and above. And then once you get above 640, you can have any loan program. A lot of what I do, is just counseling people. I mean, I'm not sitting there doing pre-approvals all day. Yeah, we got pre-approvals. But you might talk to 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 customers on counseling them about what to do to buy a home. Or this is your situation. Or I've just been divorced, what should I do? I just got out of college, what should I do? And I need a vehicle, what should I do? Basically what we would do is we look at your pre-approval. I suggest, let's look at your pre-approval where it is now. And you tell me what you need. And we can look at your pre-approval without the car and with the car, so you can make the decision.
All right, that's about wrapping up. I would just like to say that, you know, there's lots of people out there you can use. Okay, I've been doing this for 20 years in real estate, and I've worked with a lot of different lenders. I've worked with a lot of different home inspectors, a lot of the settlement companies. And I will work with anybody you guys feel comfortable with. But if you ask me for my suggestion, people that are in this room are the ones that I recommend, because I'm the one you're going to yell at settlement if it doesn't go through or if something goes wrong. And these are the ones I feel comfortable with, only through years of experience of doing it. To go back to Doug, talk about counseling, I've had 3 clients in the last probably 10 years. I think I've been working with Doug, or maybe, actually 14 years. I've had 3 clients that called me. I hadn't talked to them or anything in over 6 months because they weren't qualified. They just need to work on their stuff. And they called me and said, I've been working with Doug and I'm now qualified and I got my pre-approval letter. And this was a year into the process. He'd spent a year and a half with these people. And I hadn't talked to them and followed up because, you know, they were just working on it. And Doug stayed with them. And when you get a client that calls you 6 months, a year or something later saying, your finance guy just got me financed, let's go find a house, that makes you feel good about them. And they do call me my finance guy, but he's not really my finance guy. He's been with a couple different companies in the time I've worked with him. It doesn't matter what the mortgage company is. If the guy you're working with doesn't do it, it doesn't matter. Same thing with Housemaster. It doesn't matter. You might find another Housemaster because I think they have them all over the United States. But if the person you're working with doesn't do it and they drop the ball, you're not going to be happy. Title company, same thing. I've had title companies call me and say, we're clear to close on Friday. They called me on Wednesday, clear to close. Friday, 2 hours before settlement, they called and said, we're not going to settlement yet. It's not out of underwriting. There's no way it was out of underwriting if it was clear to close. But they will tell you whatever it takes to keep you on the line because they're afraid to call you and say, I've got a problem, we're working on it. I'd much rather hear that. I've got a problem, we're working on it. There may be a delay so I can prep the client, okay? Because like I said, the last thing you're gonna remember was that settlement. And if it all goes to hell there, we're in trouble. And I'm the one you're gonna remember. So I only work with the best people I can find. Anybody got any questions? I thank you all for coming. Thank you very much.
Thank you.